Before we begin, remember this. If you hear a station broadcasting after its tower has been cut from the grid, do not call the number they give you. And if someone on the other end asks you to lower the antenna, hang up before they say your name. Welcome back to Midnight Echo Radio. I'm Seraphine Corven. Tonight's transmission comes from a town that sold its radio tower for scrap and kept receiving calls from underneath it. Settle in. The ground is listening. Calder's Bend had one traffic light, 2 churches, 1 closed diner, and a radio tower that everyone pretended not to see. It stood on the East Ridge, just beyond the cornfields, where the road narrowed and the ditch grass grew high enough to hide rusted fence wire. By day, it was only metal. A red and white skeleton against a flat Midwestern sky. By night, when the warning bulb on top blinked through the fog, it looked less like a tower and more like something measuring the dark. The station was WCRB, 890 AM. For 46 years, it had given Calder's Bend the weather, school closings, grain prices, obituaries, lost dogs, church raffles, and the same 5 country songs every Sunday morning. Then the county lost people. The farms consolidated. The diner shut down. The station changed hands twice, automated everything, and finally went silent after a lightning strike burned out the transmitter. The tower stayed. No one wanted to pay to take it down. The old engineer, a man named Everett Vale, used to say the tower could not come down anyway. Not cleanly. Not without opening what was underneath. People thought he meant the foundation. They were wrong. I learned about WCRB from a box of cassette tapes mailed to the Midnight Echo office with no return address. The handwriting on the label was careful, old-fashioned, and almost painfully neat. Calder's Bend. Do not air after 3:17 a.m. Inside were 9 cassettes, a station logbook, a folded map of the tower property, and 1 black and white photograph. The photograph showed the base of the tower before the concrete was poured. 4 men stood around a circular opening in the earth, about 6 feet across, lined with stone. A well. Someone had written on the back. They built it straight through the mouth. The first tape was an interview with Everett Vale, recorded in 1998 by a local history student. His voice was thin but steady. He said the well had been there before the town, not before the farms, before the town. Families who settled the ridge in the 1800s called it the choir well because sound behaved strangely around it. Drop a stone, and instead of 1 splash, you heard several. Speak into it, and your words returned in other people's voices. Men went down to measure it and came back refusing to describe the bottom. A child named Eliza Morrow fell in during a drought year. Her father lowered a rope until the whole coil was gone. The rope came back wet with salt water. Calder's Bend is over 500 miles from the ocean. After that, the families capped the well with limestone and left it alone. Then, in 1954, WCRB bought the ridge. The original survey marked the cap as an old cistern. The builders broke it open, found the stone shaft, and decided it was cheaper to pour the tower footing around it than reroute the whole structure. 4 steel legs, one of them sunk close to the rim. Concrete over limestone, antenna rising from a sealed mouth. Everett was 18 then. He worked the job with his uncle. He said the first strange thing happened the night they tested the signal. They were broadcasting a tone, nothing else, while Everett sat in the control room downtown watching the needles. At 3:17 a.m., the phone rang. Not the studio request line, the engineering line. Only tower crew had that number. Everett answered. A little girl said, "You put it too high." He asked who was calling. She said, "Lower it, please." Then she began to cry, but the crying had a rhythm, like water dripping into a metal pail. When Everett checked the switchboard in the morning, there was no record of the call. For decades, WCRB had rules that were never written in the employee handbook. Do not broadcast live between 3:12 and 3:22 a.m. Do not take calls if the line hums before it rings. Do not say tower on air after midnight. Do not play dead air longer than 7 seconds. And if a caller asks for the antenna to be lowered, cut the line immediately. The rules held until the station automated. Machines are obedient, but they do not know fear. In 2009, after the staff was reduced to one part-time manager and the remote playlist, WCRB began airing pre-recorded overnight blocks from a server. Nobody was supposed to be in the studio. Nobody was supposed to answer the phones, but the request line stayed connected. On March 4th, at 3:17 a.m., the server logged an interruption. 12 seconds of dead air. Then, an unidentified voice entered the broadcast. It said, "This is Eliza Morrow. I am still at the bottom." The next morning, 7 people called the station to complain. 3 said it woke them from sleep. 1 said the voice came through her baby monitor. One man, a retired sheriff's deputy, said it played from the speakers of his truck even though the radio was off. The station manager blamed a hacked feed. Everett Vale came out of retirement that same afternoon. He drove to the tower, cut the lock on the gate, and found something hanging from the lowest crossbeam. A coil of rope. Old hemp, wet through, dripping onto dry gravel. No footprints led to it. Everett took it down, burned it in a barrel, and told the station manager to disconnect the request line before midnight. The manager did not. That is when the calls began coming in every night. At first, they were local dead. That is what the logbook says. Everett's handwriting is cramped in the margins. March 8th. Caller identified as Leon Pate. Died 1971. Tractor rollover. Asked for wife. Then asked us to lower antenna. March 9th. Caller identified as Sister Agnes. Died 1988. Said children were singing below. Asked us to lower antenna. March 11th. Caller identified as my Uncle Ray. Voice accurate. Used private family nickname. Terminated line. By March 19th, the calls were no longer all from the dead. Some came from people still living in Calder's Bend. A woman named Ruth Haskell heard herself on air asking to be pulled up. She was listening from her kitchen while making coffee for her husband. Her own voice begged the station to stop, holding the light over the hole. 2 days later, Ruth vanished from the grocery store parking lot between loading bags and returning the cart. Her car was found running. The radio was tuned to 8:90 a.m. The station had been off the air for 6 hours. Everett wrote one line beneath her name. It learns them before it takes them. There is a copy of the final broadcast in the box. It begins with a weather report from a night no one can identify. The announcer's voice is bright, local, almost cheerful. Cloud cover moving in from the west, low of 38, chance of rain by morning. Then the audio warps, not like tape damage, but like the room around the microphone has grown larger. A phone rings. 1 ring. 2. 3. A click. Everett says, WCRB engineering. For a while, there is only hum. Under the hum, very faintly, you can hear water. Then a woman says, "Everett?" He does not answer. She says it again. "Everett, I can see the red light." His breathing changes. The woman on the line is his wife, Mara. She had died 4 years earlier in hospice, surrounded by family, nowhere near the tower. "Do not use her voice," Everett says. Mara laughs softly, not cruelly, sadly. "I am not using it," she says. "It is what they gave me when I came down." Everett tells her she did not come down. He watched her be buried in St. Matthew's Cemetery. There is a pause. Then Mara says, "You bury people under the sky and think that keeps them there." The hum grows louder. Behind it, other voices gather, not speaking yet, breathing, waiting their turn. Mara says, "The tower holds the way shut. Lower the antenna." Everett says nothing. She says, "Please. It hurts when the light passes through us." That is the first time the request sounds almost merciful. Almost. Everett asks what will happen if he lowers it. The voices behind Mara stop breathing. For 6 seconds, the tape is perfectly silent. Then hundreds of people whisper at once, "We come up." Everett cuts the line. The station never broadcast again. 2 weeks later, WCRB's license was surrendered. The studio building became a tax office, then a storage unit, then nothing. The tower remained on the ridge, blinking its red warning light long after the power company confirmed the service had been disconnected. Everett Vale disappeared in 2014. His truck was found at the locked gate. Inside were bolt cutters, a thermos, 2 cassette recorders, and a handwritten note. "If I am on the line, do not believe me." The tower was finally scheduled for demolition last spring. A contractor out of Peoria took the job. The town council wanted the land cleared before someone got hurt climbing the structure. The crew arrived on a Thursday morning, cut the fence, and began removing old guy wires. At noon, every radio in Calder's Bend turned on. Car radios, kitchen radios, weather radios, the antique receiver in the Historical Society, a toy walkie-talkie in a child's bedroom. All of them tuned themselves to 890 AM. All of them played the same sound, a rope being lowered into a deep place. The crew quit before sunset. That night, the request line rang in a studio that no longer had phones. A woman living next door to the old station heard it through the wall. She called the police. The deputy who responded found the building empty, the power shut off at the breaker, and an old rotary phone sitting on the floor in the broadcast booth. It was wet. When he lifted the receiver, a little girl whispered, "Is the tower down yet?" The deputy hung up and resigned 3 days later. The cassette box arrived here 1 week after that. I do not know who sent it. I do know one more thing. The logbook has blank pages after Everett's final note. On the last page, in ink that looks newer than the rest, someone wrote a frequency, 890 AM. Below it, a time, 3:17. And below that, a sentence I have not been able to forget. When the red light goes dark, do not look toward the ridge, because something will be looking back from where the tower used to stand. I checked the current FCC records. WCRB does not exist. Calder's Bend does not appear on any modern county map under that name. The Ridge Road has been renamed twice. but there are still listener reports from that part of Illinois, mostly truckers, mostly after storms. A dead AM signal under the static. A woman asking if anyone can hear the water. A little girl counting rings before someone answers. And, once, an old man's voice. Everett Vale. He sounded tired. He said, "If you can hear this, keep the tower standing." Then, after a pause, he said something quieter. Or whatever is wearing him did. "Unless you want us to come home." This has been Midnight Echo Radio. I'm Seraphine Corven. If you pass an old tower tonight, and the red light blinks once through the fog, keep driving. Do not stop to listen. Do not count the rings. And if the radio tunes itself to a station that has been dead for years, turn it off before the caller asks you to lower anything into the dark.